Independence Day is taking on a whole new meaning tonight for Sean Diddy Combs. After being acquitted today of the most serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking in his federal criminal trial, the music mogul was convicted of 2 counts of transportation for prostitution, what's also known as the Mann Act. So much happened today in court. I'm criminal trial attorney Sara Azari, and this is Serving Justice. Tonight, we're drilling down on this explosive verdict and so much more in the blockbuster trial of Sean Diddy Combs. I'm joined today by NewsNation digital reporter Safia Samee Ali, who's been with me throughout this trial, and NewsNation field producer Tommy Christaldi, who brings us a behind-the-scenes look at all of the goings-on inside the courthouse and the courtroom on this grand finale day. So, hi, Safia and Tommy. Thanks for joining me. Safia, I want to start with you. Sean Combs, guilty of Mann Act violations, transportation for prostitution, I called it, and
totally did.
And not guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering. What's your reaction to this verdict?
First of all, Sarah, I got to give it to you. You called this weeks ago.
Spot on.
I was skeptical of it. I'm gonna have to concede. You definitely. I wasn't convinced, but you were like, no, this is what's going to happen. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. My reaction, so I'm not shocked. None of this is shocking. The only thing that I was a little surprised about was the sex trafficking on Cassie. I didn't think they had it enough for racketeering. Anything to do with Jane, I didn't think it was strong enough. I really did think they had enough for the sex trafficking on Cassie, especially because the jury asked for transcripts that related to the 2016 Intercontinental Hotel incident where, you see him beating her and dragging her, and also transcripts from their interaction when they were coming back from Cannes where he was essentially showing her the freak off videos and going to threaten her. I really thought that was pointing to the direction of a guilty verdict for sex trafficking on Cassie. So that's the only thing that I'm a little surprised about, but everything else I think kind of fell into place the way that we all kind of thought it would.
I think I was a bit concerned about that yesterday. And I thought, in fact, I was on Chris Cuomo's show and I said, Cassie's now a toss-up for me. I was thinking not guilty, but given what they asked for, they're focusing on, freak-offs and blackmail or violence really close in time together. But I think now in hindsight, they looked at these transcripts and they were looking sort of for the communications following. Remember, you guys, we were talking about how, well, why isn't it in the text? I think, Tommy, you were saying, well, they said all the stuff in text, but they didn't say this in the text, and I think they were focused on what are they talking about? Was this really consensual, or did they feel coerced into those particular freak-offs? Tommy, how did Diddy behave in court as this verdict was read today? And then what was his reaction as it sunk in? Because I know from being in the shoes of his lawyers, it's at first you don't even know what you're hearing. It takes a minute.
Well, first of all, his lawyers were jubilant, like hugs all around. Mark Agnifilo slapping Xavier Donaldson on the chest. Let's go. That was a celebration. Diddy himself, this morning, he seemed a little bit nervous. For example, while we all stood up awaiting the jury to come in, the jury comes in, judge says, all rise. Today, everybody was ready for it. We were standing before that even happened, except for Sean Combs. He was sitting there. His head was bowed. He led his family in a prayer this morning. He said, pray for the jury, pray for my family. A very, very religious behavior today. He was reading Psalm 11, I think, before the verdict came down. When the verdict came down, count 1, not guilty. There was a gasp in the courtroom. Count 2, not guilty. There was a louder gasp because I think many of them, like many of us, thought that the sex trafficking for Cassie was really a toss-up, could go either way. While the judge was thanking the jury, Sean Combs was nodding along. He was prayer hands, thank you, mouthing it over and over. And then there was a moment when the jury had left the room, the judge had left the bench, prosecutors had left. Diddy got on his knees and he rested his arms on that chair and he took a minute to pray. I think he's elated and his family is clearly thrilled. There were hugs all around, tears. It was quite the scene.
So speaking of prayer, doesn't matter how much time he gets. I think this is now about finding Jesus, living a very clean life. And,
one would hope.
Do you think so? That's what's going to happen, moving forward, or do you think he's going to be like, I got away, or he's going to think I'm untouchable?
Kind
of reinforces that.
I'm obviously being, I'm being a little flippant, but I think that this had to have been a humbling experience. I don't think that in the court of public opinion, he's ever going to be Sean Combs again. But you know what? He has a $400 million net worth. He has a large family. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. This is, to me, this verdict it sent a message, a very loud message, that we are going to put the brakes on Me Too's reach on perfectly consensual adult relationships, no matter how freaky they are. And that we're also going to put the brakes on the overreaching and abusive use of the RICO statute, specifically by SDNY, but really in all districts across the country. So to me, that was the larger message that this verdict sent. And I think people recognize that. Anyone that's been following this trial is going to go, you know what? The guy is like a freak. He's a wife beater. He's done bad things, but he didn't do these things, and this was the right result. And but it's got to be humbling to some extent. I mean, he's never going to have the same, he's always going to be looked at as the guy on that video beating and dragging Cassie. That's what people are going to remember of Sean Combs, not his, top hits. You know what I mean? So it's got to impact him some way. I mean, Jesus finding, that's probably a little extreme, but if he's about to find Jesus at some point in his life, it's now. I mean, I think. And Safia, we have not, at the time that we're recording this segment about today, we are in between the positions regarding bond by each side. They've been submitted to the judge by a deadline of 1 p.m. The hearing on those positions is going to be at 5 p.m. We're recording in between. So we don't know whether or not Sean Combs is going to get bond. My prediction is he will get bond. Prostitution is not the kind of charge that under the bail statute is in and of itself presumptively a detention type of charge. And I believe that if he was only charged with prostitution, he would have been out on bond. The question is, what are the terms and conditions of his bond? Is it going to be just a surety bond where someone signs for it for a certain dollar amount, or do they have to secure it with property, which obviously is no problem? He now got to keep his $400 million net worth, where that he would have lost it if he was guilty of racketeering. So, he might have to be on an ankle monitor, or he might have to have a curfew, but I see him going home tonight or soon thereafter. What do you think, Safia?
I agree. I think that he got out of this by the skin of his teeth with the least charge from all the different various charges, 3 charges that was put on him. So I just don't see a judge holding him. He's been in jail for almost 10 months now. So I agree. There's just not, he doesn't have a criminal background. There's all these other factors.
Yeah, all these factors.
Go home. Yeah.
And Tommy, there are two main factors, really 2 factors under the Bail Reform Act in a federal bond hearing. One is whether you're a flight risk. The other one is whether you're a danger to the community. If we're talking about sex trafficking and racketeering with all those predicate acts,
right?
Oh yeah, that's why he was never given bond. But prostitution across state lines is
it's like Mark Agnifilo said. I wrote it down because I thought it was a good point. He said he would be nothing short of a fool to do anything that would violate any conditions of whatever release he's granted. Right. And he's no fool. He treasures the opportunity that he's been given. I think that says it right there, right? Like, okay, there's an argument to be made. He's a flight risk, but he surrendered his plane. He surrendered his passport. He doesn't have any of that. So and
he's in a different position now than when he was initially charged.
Oh, absolutely.
With these serious charges. We're now, he's only convicted of this, of this offense that is bond eligible. So he needs to get bond. The question is how much is it? Is it a hybrid bond? Is it a surety? Is it a, secured? And, what the terms and conditions will be. I mean, frankly, this kind of charge, I mean, I wouldn't even expect an ankle monitor or home confinement. I would expect maybe a curfew. I would expect not to be, maybe his phone to be monitored. There's a software that pretrial services puts on a defendant's phone to monitor where they are or are not allowed, websites they're not allowed to go to. I'm sure he's gonna have conditions where, for example, he's not allowed to visit certain websites or have internet access because he was, essentially getting these male escorts, right, to travel for prostitution. So there might be some conditions that are specific to the offense, but
the condition, Sarah, that the defense laid out in their letter, it's $1 million bond. Surety is going to be signed by his mom, his sister, and the mother of his oldest child. He is going to continue to surrender his passport. His movement is only going to be between the jurisdictions in California, which is, I'm assuming, his Los Angeles,
Florida, and New York,
Miami in Florida, and New York, New Jersey. So he can't really be doing a lot of crazy things.
Yeah, but that's what the defense wants. I can see a scenario where the judge says, I want to leave it to pretrial services to impose some specific conditions based on the offense. I could see a scenario where he may not have internet access while he's pending sentencing. So we'll see again, nothing, all of this beats being behind bars. So whatever, all right, Tommy, you found yourself, of course you did. Of course you did. In the elevator with some of Diddy's kids after the verdict. Please do tell.
So here's what happened. They are herding us out of court. The court marshals are like, please leave. So we all leave. And the first elevator that comes, I step into it. And I assume that behind me in the elevator are going to be a bunch of members of the press. So I move up into the corner of the elevator. I make myself small because these elevators get crowded. We're all the way up on the 26th floor. And instead, Christian Combs walks in with his girlfriend. Justin Combs walks in with his girlfriend. Fahim walks in. Charlucci walks in. And the elevator doors close. And they start jumping up and down. I thought the elevator was going to break. These elevators in the courthouse have had problems. People have gotten stuck during this trial. And actually, the elevator stopped at the 21st floor. I guess somebody was trying to get on. And for a moment, I thought that it had broken down and I was going to be stuck in an elevator with the Combs kids. That didn't happen. Thankfully, I got to come outside and share this story. But while we were in there, Christian Combs said he was overjoyed, said he can't wait to hug his dad. And Charlucci is banging on the doors, shouting, let's go, in a bit more colorful language. And the overwhelming sentiment was just joy. They were thrilled. And something I thought was really interesting, obviously this is before the bond hearing has happened. So they have no basis for this, but everybody was saying in the elevator, we're throwing a big party in Miami for July 4th. He's going to be there. It's going to be awesome. It was, regardless of how you feel about Sean Combs, I've been feeling for his children this entire time. Yeah. I can't imagine what they're going through. And so at the very least, their joy was nice to see and nice to completely accidentally stumble into.
Do they not, he's still a convicted felon.
Yeah,
so this was a win for them.
I understand, of course. This is definitely a win. Yeah.
The only time today why does he care,
Safia, why would he care about being convicted? He's a 55-year-old man who's set for life. His money's untouched. He has no reputation or career anymore. But it's not like he's going to go apply at Target and they're going to do a background check on him.
It's true.
He's very different than the regular defendant who's not a famous wealthy guy who goes down on a felony and his life is over. You know what I mean? So I honestly don't think he really cares about and by the way, how many rappers and, famous people have felonies? A lot. I just think it's probably one industry where it doesn't impact you as much because, you're paid for your talent and not working a 9 to 5 where they do background.
We've been saying this the whole time, right? The defense knows he's going to be convicted on these charges, and he was, and they argued them as best they possibly could, right? But he's paying for time, only got them so far. I think that this is absolutely the best case scenario for them. Yeah, and I think the family is aware of that for sure.
I remember I kept saying, I would take this. I would be happy that there is this charge in the mix so they could find him guilty of something. Remember, I kept saying that. And, and obviously, I think they went in there, they had their minds made up on Jane, they had their minds made up on the transportation for prostitution, and they just really focused in on racketeering and Cassie. That's, that seems to be, and that, 13 hours is enough time for that. So anyway, all right, Safia, we don't know when the sentencing is, right? Typically it's like 90 days from the date of the change of plea or the verdict, but it can always get extended, especially if the defendant is out on bail and not inside. There's really no rush, so we can get an extension of time. But as of now, we really don't have any idea, right, when he would be sentenced.
We don't have a sentencing date yet, for a sentencing hearing.
And I just want to, for our viewers, I just want to try to briefly unpack how this works. A sentencing date is set, and then the United States Probation Department does a very comprehensive investigation of the defendant. They interview the prosecution. They also interview the defendant. They interview relatives, family, references, all kinds of people to put together sort of a history and background on the defendant. And they do their own guideline calculation of what his sentencing exposure should be. They're not bound by what each side wants. And they look at financial records, like, in cases where there's restitution or court fines and things like that. They look at financial records. They look at assets. I mean, the forms are 3 inches thick, and you got to fill it all out. You got to go through the interview. That report is called the PSR, pre-sentence investigative report. It goes to the judge, and it's kind of something that the judge really leans into or leans on to come up with a fair sentence. The parties then get to object to that, and also to each other's positions. So each side will get to present their memorandum or sentencing position in support of what they want. And so it'll be very interesting to see what probation recommends, what each side wants, and ultimately what the judge will do. Because this judge, unlike a judge who sentences somebody after a change of plea, this judge has actually heard the evidence. And what are his feelings about this really, really, really bad guy that didn't do the things he was tried for? It'll be interesting to see how he has viewed all of this. I know that he wasn't really fond of the racketeering. He didn't really think the government should have brought that charge. So we'll see. One last thing too, Safia and Tommy, feel free to jump in. Do you think an appeal of his conviction on the Mann Act charges is on the horizon? Because, after all, it was pretty well supported. But still, I think the defense did a really great job making a robust record for appeal. They had an appellate lawyer sitting there every single day creating this record. So do you think that they're still going to go ahead and appeal? And what will that look like for Diddy?
Yeah, I do think they are. They've appealed everything thus far. They're appealing the bail. They filed multiple motions for mistrial. So they're not that's just part of their job. I think that they definitely need to do it. That's a very long road, Sarah. We're talking about years here. This is not happening in the next couple of months. So they'll definitely talk about the judge perhaps not following certain legal rules properly, maybe not ruling on evidence and witnesses in a way they think was fair. So that's all going to be put in that appeal. And I 100% think they are going to be moving forward with that. And I'm sure Diddy.
Well, I think the one argument, I don't have the case law, of course, but the one argument is interesting is that they brought in all of this, evidence of, the hotel video, the freak out videos, all these things that, but for the racketeering charge, would never have been admissible. That's the beauty of the racketeering charge for the government. Is they can bring in a wide variety of evidence that's otherwise inadmissible because there's no time constraint, right? So they brought in all this stuff, which in turn turned the jury sort of, put the jury in this direction of finding guilt on the prostitution. Whereas without that, maybe they would have bought the argument that these men were paid for their time as opposed to sex, right? That there's some arguments there, I think, but
absolutely some arguments there.
Would be sipping on some. I'd be sipping on some tequila, hitting the dance floor if I was on this defense team. I would be happy. But hey,
would you file an appeal? Like if you were his defense lawyer, would you just be like, if this is a win, or would you keep going? Would you file an appeal?
I would file an appeal because I think this is some bullshit that they prosecuted this guy. They would have never gone after him if it was just prostitution, ever. I think that this was BS. They were hoping they're going to put him away for life, and it failed. And I would appeal, because why should he do any time when it's an abuse of power by the government? I just think, look, we all have a pulse, and literally the government can indict us on something. Everyone's doing something wrong at all times. Okay, seriously. It's just about like who was in the spotlight, who was caught, who was zeroed in on, and then so yes, he's committed crimes, certain crimes, but like at the end of the day, this is not something that the SDNY would have gone after, but it's a black mogul. It's a powerful black man. And ironically, 6 white women went after him to take him down, and it failed.
What I will say
I would appeal, Tommy, because I feel strongly about, like, he was singled out because of his celebrity.
Sure. When you started asking the question, I found myself shaking my head. That was not, I don't think they will appeal. It was that I don't necessarily think that they'll win an appeal. Certainly they will. That's what she's there for, Alexandra Shapiro. That being said, before you started talking, I was thinking to myself, there's no way they win that appeal. The evidence was obvious, but you've made some really compelling points. And now I'm certainly more invested in how that appeal will go.
I mean, to be honest, I am not an appellate lawyer. I refer my appeals to someone else who's much smarter than me, as a law and motion attorney who, is like Alexandra Shapiro, has all the case law in her head. But there's always, to me, the hook in this trial was the RICO. The RICO is what opened the door to all of this terrible evidence to come in to really sort of smear Diddy and put his, some bad things he did on full display. Without that, they wouldn't be able to show the jury all this stuff, and so if they can go after the sort of the misuse of the racketeering charge, and the way now that they have all the evidence and testimony that they had to support the racketeering, and they can show that a prosecutor is not supposed to file something just because there's probable cause. They have to actually look forward and believe that they can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. They knew that this is all they had, and they still brought this charge and put this man behind bars for a year. I mean, I see an argument like that, and they'll say, and this was all a guise in order to be able to bring in all this evidence that would otherwise be inadmissible. And but for that, he would not have been guilty of prostitution. I mean, we'll probably unpack the appellate brief together when it gets filed.
I'll say this as perhaps a last note from me. There were T-shirts being handed out outside of court yesterday or the day before.
Did you get us some T-shirts?
I did not, unfortunately. I kind of wish I had, because with the shirt said on them, and I think that this is a great slogan to sum up how all of this went. Frico is not Rico. There you go.
I love it. I love it. It couldn't be said better. Safia, I do have one last question before we go. The prosecution's letter about this 53 to 61 months?
51 to 63 months.
Oh,
that's what the sentence, yeah.
51 to 63 months. Do they say the offense level?
Yeah, they do.
Hold on. Don't tell me. Okay. It's level 24.
If I
saw all that language in there, I didn't quite know what any of that meant. I was going to leave that to you guys.
Yeah. It's level. I think it's level 24. What they're doing is they are taking the base offense level of 14. How are they getting to 24 though? Where's the other 10 coming from? I don't understand. I don't understand how they're getting there.
They lay out all the different factors, and they take into considering the sentencing guidelines. But they initially said, because transportation to engage in prostitution has a 10-year maximum sentence per count. So they were going to go full forward with the 20-year. They're like, we are seeking the full 20-year sentence. And then this letter came out where they changed their tone a little, and they said it's going to be now we're seeking 51, the more appropriate, not what they're seeking. Under the guidelines, it's 51 to 63 years, so we're looking at 4 to 5 years. But they did reserve the right to say this could be a little bit more.
Yeah. They're gonna come guns blazing at the sentencing and argue all the aggravating factors, like all the arson, that all the bad things he's done. That even though he's not found guilty of them, they can be argued for sentencing as aggravating factors. On the defense side, what they're going to argue is his drug addiction, the fact that he's a family man, he's a really good father, that being a freak is what he does in the bedroom. It doesn't impact anyone else, because now the defense can argue that because there's no guilt on sex trafficking. So he has a lot of mitigating factors. He has no criminal history. He has a very young child as well. He's worked hard. He was self-made at the age of 24. He practiced DEI before it became a mandate. All the things that we've heard of. So we're going to have aggravating and mitigating factors, and ultimately the judge will decide. But yeah, they're leaving the door open to come in and, try to get more time. But I'm going to read that. I'm going to figure out what the analysis is. But I see him getting like maybe 2-3 years, and then he gets credit for what he's done. And it's not a lot of time. But Tommy, so at 5:00 today Eastern, what we're going to learn is what the bond is.
Yeah.
Whether he gets bond and what the bond is. But don't you think the judge kind of indicated that he's going to get bond?
I don't know that I would say there was necessarily an indication. I do know the judge was talking about what are the logistics of him walking out of here today. So perhaps that says something. I'm not too sure. I can't say that I've been in the only other courtroom that I've been in when a verdict was read.
Didn't he joke and say, and I'm assuming Mr. Combs will want to go home or something.
Oh, yeah, sure. He said, well, that was in relation to what should go on while he decides on this. That was him deciding, I'm going to make a ruling on bond today. Does Mr. Combs want to go back to the MDC in the meantime? And Sean Combs shook his head very vigorously. And I don't know that was relating to what the bond will or will not be so much as let's get this wrapped up today.
Okay, so I think that's what all we have now until we know what this bond situation is. I want to thank you both, my talented team, for joining me on this journey, this Diddy journey, covering this blockbuster trial of the summer and probably of the decade, I think. And thanks to all of you out there who've been joining us on a daily basis as we navigated this trial with twists and turns. And a happy 4th of July to all of you. For now, the defense rests.